I could see. Karen, how are you? Nice to see you. Any of your colleagues here? You're waving the commissioners on behalf of all commissioners, right? Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us in this important discussion. I want to thank everyone here at Behavioral Crossroads for what you are giving back to this community and for hosting us this morning. Where's Lori McCline? She was very gracious to meet me out front and escort me in, so thank you to you and your team. Before I go on, as has been my habit of late, and I think we have to square up and be clear about this. There is a war of choice going on, led by the Putin thug, lying, savage regime. And New Jersey will stand in spirit, action, prayer, and any other way we can with our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. We have among the largest Ukrainian populations of any American state. We have just about 75,000, only New York, California, and a little bit more in Pennsylvania. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church, other than Canada, its global headquarters outside of Ukraine is located in Somerset County, New Jersey. And I know Vince and Claire saw the other day with me the Metropolitan Antony, who is the head of that church for everywhere outside of Ukraine and Canada, gave our invocation at the budget address earlier this week. This is an unspeakable tragedy. We're doing everything we can. Obviously, there's only so much a state can do, but if you are interested in participating and understanding what we are doing, please go to nj.gov/Ukraine, nj.gov/Ukraine. You'll see at a minimum, you will see a list of websites and places you can go to donate, whether it's money, clothing, armored vests, I think the whole range of items. And we will stand in solidarity, as I say, in spirit, in prayer, and in action. So God bless everyone there. I want to recognize, obviously I've got an august group with me at the table, but before I go through that group, I see Sarah Edelman is with us, our acting commissioner of the Department of Human Services. Sarah, great to have you. Is that you, Christine, behind the mask? I apologize. The commissioner of the Department of Children and Families, Christine Norbert-Beyer, is also with us. I also want to acknowledge Assemblywoman Claire Swift is with us besides Sarah and Christine. I mentioned Commissioner Karen Fitzpatrick. Ernie, is that you? Were you sitting there when I just asked Karen? Okay. Okay. Atlantic County Commissioners Karen Fitzpatrick and Ernie Corsi are with us. Great to have you both, and to other folks who are teammates at Behavioral Crossroads or other dignitaries. It's an honor to be here with you all. So I'm joined up at this table by the guy to my right is the Acting Attorney General and a great leader, Matt Plotkin. We'll hear from Matt in a few moments. Matt, great to be with you. To your right, I guess, we've got Assistant Commissioner of the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services, Valerie Milkey. Valerie, it's great to have you with us as well. We have on the far left, Priscilla Robinson is Director of the Not One More campaign. Yeah. Caitlin O'Neill, to my left, from the New Jersey Harm Reduction Coalition. Great to be back with you, Caitlin. We also have to Matt's right, Tricia Haynes, a counselor right here at Behavioral Crossroads Recovery. Great to have you. The opioid epidemic knows no bounds, and it certainly does not care what political party you're in. So in that respect, I'm incredibly honored to be joined by representatives, outstanding representatives, I have to say, from the Republican Party, Senator Vince Palestina to my far right. Vince, great to be with you. I mentioned Assemblywoman Claire Swift. Claire, thank you. And to my left, a guy who I normally only speak to in stormy weather, Egg Harbor Township, Mayor Paul Hodson. And Paul, thank you for hosting us in this great community. I believe the largest population community in Atlantic County, am I right? I think so, right? So it's an honor to be here. And this is a sober, topic today, but it's one that there's enormous not only passion, but enormous amounts of resources putting up against this crisis before us. So on Tuesday, as I mentioned, and Vince and Claire were there, I presented, as was Matt, and our fellow cabinet members, I presented a state budget that would maintain our data-driven investment to address the substance use crisis in the overdose epidemic. Importantly, we're investing in the critical mission and work of harm reduction centers, treatment programs, just like Behavioral Crossroads, I might add, among so much more. A vital part of this investment will be our state's share coming in over the next 18 years of the more than $640 million from the multi-state settlement with opioid manufacturers and distributors. Their profits will now go, as they should, to helping rebuild the lives that have been destroyed. These funds will be split 50-50 between the state on the one hand and impacted municipalities on the other hand. And together we're going to maximize every dollar. Now, one of the caveats of this significant amount of resources is that it cannot be used, nor should it be used, nor would we ever do this, to replace state dollars that we're already applying to this crisis. So in every case, these are plus-ups to all the programs that we're currently investing in. And I mentioned in the budget that's nearly $100 million on the state side. This will be added to that, as it should. Now, it's not the only settlement. I suspect Matt may refer to this. Through his offices, we are proposing to put $13 million from a separate opioid marketing settlement to use in expanding harm reduction services and supporting existing and new programs that help with the screening for substance abuse disorders and connecting people excuse me, to treatment. And I think $9 million of this $13 million is already, a request is already with the legislature's Joint Budget Oversight Committee, and we look forward to swift approval. And again, Matt will likely provide more. Now, in 2021, the overdose epidemic claimed 3,081 blessed New Jersey lives. That's an average, by the way, of more than 8 lost lives a day. Compared to 2020, it's an increase of about 30 deaths and about 86 more than we saw in 2019. Now, we in New Jersey did not see an acceleration of deaths during the pandemic at the rate that many other states experienced. We are hopeful that this is due to the strong foundation that we have all collectively been building together over the past number of years and will continue to build upon. If you will, the past several years, the curve has flattened. But when you've lost 3,081 lives, that's 3,081 lives too many. Let there be no doubt about it. We have to stay at this. I mentioned in the the COVID pandemic, that we cannot realistically manage it to zero. It's an endemic that's going to be with us like the flu is with us. I think all of us, as it relates to the opioid pandemic, are committed to doing everything we can to drive that number to zero. Last Friday, by the way, speaking of the COVID pandemic, officially, it's been 2 years since that pandemic has visited New Jersey. And we've entered every day aware not only of the need to fight COVID, but of the need to prevent increases in substance abuse and overdose deaths, and to renew the commitments across agencies, providers, and communities to prevent disruption in vital services. And we know the pandemic has only added to mental health challenges, stress, anxiety, loneliness in society. I want to specifically acknowledge Sarah, Valerie, Judy Persicelli, who's not with us, our Commissioner of the Department of Health, Christine, and everyone on their teams for working to keep harm reduction and treatment and recovery supports accessible throughout the pandemic. Fighting COVID highlighted the value of harm reduction, which is one of the key approaches we take in this space. Harm reduction practices meet people where they are, and because of their clear evidence-based impact, we know they reduce disease and save lives. We remain committed to working across departments with service providers and alongside our legislative, county, and municipal partners. We recognize that criminal prosecution of those suffering from addiction and returning to the failed war on drugs will not solve this problem. Every time I clear my throat, my back is. Instead, we must ensure that people have access to treatment and compassionate care. Finally, I acknowledge the commitment of everyone here today, including the work of the guy to my right, the Acting Attorney General, and his dedicated team for leading the legal fight and securing these resources for the people of our state. And most importantly, solemnly, I honor and remember the lives lost to this devastating crisis. As I said, we will not give up this fight, and we will not give up hope, and we won't give up on the residents who need our compassion the most. Again, thank you for hosting us so graciously this morning. And with that, I'm going to go around and ask folks a few questions. But before we do, I'd like to turn things over to the Acting Attorney General, Matt Plotkin, for a few words. Matt?
Thank you, Governor. And good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I want to first thank the Governor not only for organizing this important event, but for your tireless commitment as well as your administration's tireless commitment to combating the opioid epidemic, which we all know has harmed far too many New Jerseyans over the past decades. This is a truly historic moment in that fight. I want to thank and acknowledge all the panelists that are here, legislators, my fellow members of the administration, mayors, as well as, importantly, the people who are doing the hard work every day to provide relief to people who are suffering from addiction. And as well as to my colleagues from the Department of Public Safety, Chief Counsel Matt Burns, and others who have spent years litigating these important cases. As we know, and as I mentioned, the opioid crisis has devastated the lives of far too many New Jersey residents. No corner of our state has gone untouched, but today it's great to announce that we're turning a new page. For years, our office has been pursuing lawsuits and settlement negotiations to hold drug companies accountable for the role they played in fueling the opioid epidemic by falsely downplaying the risks of opioids and by failing to prevent illicit sales. Now, those efforts are quite literally paying off. The state, and this is important, the state, all 21 counties, and hundreds of New Jersey municipalities have joined together to enter into nationwide settlements with 4 of the companies that share the responsibility for fueling this crisis. The drug manufacturer, Johnson & Johnson, as well as 3 drug distributors, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen. Because our state, counties, and municipalities were able to work together to resolve these lawsuits, New Jersey and our communities will be receiving the maximum amount of money that we were eligible to receive under these awards. This is a truly big deal and something not every state will be able to say. That amount includes $641 million that will be spent almost entirely for treatment and recovery, prevention, and other strategies like supporting first responders and funding research to combat the opioid epidemic in years to come. And Governor, you mentioned some of the money that's already being put out through other settlements. Just to give you a flavor of how real these programs are, through that money we'll be able to establish drug court programs at municipal level, which don't currently exist. With partnership with the Department of Children and Families, we'll be able to train law enforcement to identify signs of trauma in youth who are dealing with parents who are suffering from addiction and provide them the resources and services that we do provide throughout the state. The money will truly be put to good use. I look forward to working with the Department of Human Services as well as other agencies, experts, and stakeholders to ensure that these funds are targeted where they are most useful. And I also look forward to these funds and funds from other settlements being used for critical programs like supporting treatment and rehabilitation, and importantly, not incarceration, for low-level offenders affected by addiction, and supporting services for children and their family members who are dealing with substance abuse disorders. As part of these settlements, our office agreed with counties and municipalities that most of the funds will be divided 50-50 between state and local governments. This means that the money will reach communities directly where it is most needed. We've also agreed, and the Governor mentioned this, that these funds will not supplant existing funding streams. Instead, we will use these funds to expand programs that are working and create new programs to address the opioid epidemic at the county, state, and local levels. I know people have been concerned that these funds will be used in the same way that tobacco settlement funds were used in the 1990s, that state and local governments will use them to plug budget holes. I'm here today to tell you, thanks to the work we've done and the settlements we're entering into, that will not happen. This money will be used to save lives through treatment, prevention, and other strategies. And I must say, Governor, thanks to your leadership, we don't even have the budget holes to fill anymore that might have otherwise been there. As Acting Attorney General, I am beyond proud of our collective progress and honored to work alongside the Governor, his administration, cabinet members, legislators, county and local government leaders, addiction specialists, and individuals working tirelessly in the treatment space to ensure that New Jersey residents receive the services and opportunities that they deserve. When I had the great fortune of being nominated by the Governor, I stated that my highest priority was keeping New Jerseyans safe. These settlements reflect the power that we have when we hold those accountable who abuse their power, and when we prioritize the well-being and health of all of our residents. I thank the Governor, I thank everyone here for having me, and this is truly a momentous day in our fight against the opioid epidemic.
Thank you, Matt. Well said. And by the way, you and the team have picked up the fight that has been waged over the years, including by your predecessors, Chris Perino in the Christie administration, if not before, Gurbir Graywal, Andrew Bruck in our administration, and now you and your teammates who are here deserve an enormous amount of thanks for that.
Absolutely.
So deep appreciation. Tricia, let's start with you. Do you mind maybe give us a little bit of insight as to your own story? What supports have been the most important for you? And if you were king for a day and you had control over this money, where would you like to see the priority spent? And again, great to be with you. And again, Tricia's here as a behavioral crossroads recovery counselor.
Good morning. How are you? So I used for many years, and opioids is a big part of my story. And I was a client here at Behavioral Crossroads, and it was here that I decided that I wanted to help people and become a counselor. I learned how to work on my behaviors. I learned how to mend relationships. When I came here, I didn't have anything. I lost everything. I hadn't spoken to my children or my family in 6 years. I came here through drug court, and my biggest support systems were drug court, Behavioral Crossroads, and 12-step fellowships, sponsorship, home group, meetings, and I rebuilt my life again. And with this money, I think the most important issues are to reach teens and young adults and educate educators on the signs of use through their curriculums on relapse prevention, coping skills, and mental health awareness, and making sure these students have been properly evaluated on co-occurring disorders. Also making sure the families are aware of and involved in what's going on with their children.
How long have you been a counselor here?
I've been a counselor here for 1.5 years, and I have 4 years clean.
God bless you. Is a question, are some of the counselors here also former clients?
Some of them are and some of them aren't. Also, it's really important that you know that my family did come back into my life. And my daughter, she came here and spoke to the clients about what it's like to have parents in addiction, and it was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old are your kids?
18 and 13.
God bless them.
Yeah.
Which one is the daughter that spoke?
My 18-year-old, she's back in my life. The other one isn't ready yet, but she'll come back as long as I keep doing what I'm doing.
Wow. Let's hear it one more time for Tricia.
Thank you.
Incredible.
Thank you so much for having me.
Come on, are you kidding me? It's our honor. Let's stay on this side of the table, Valerie. We're sharing. I apologize. We should have sprung for some more mics. I apologize. As you can see, we've spared no expense here. We'll get a bullhorn next time. Valerie, again, is the Department of Human Services Assistant Commissioner. Great to be with you again. I know you and your colleagues across the administration work hard to break down barriers to accessing treatment. Give us a little bit of sense of what steps you take, especially I'm thinking of, which was a huge sort of bridge to cross in our early days in our administration, medication-assisted treatment, or so-called MAT. And the other piece, Valerie, is we know racial disparities exist everywhere, and this is no exception. A little bit more color, and that includes not just folks who are addicted, but sadly, folks who are passing. Can you share a little bit about how the Department of Human Services is going about addressing some of these disparities? And again, thank you for your service, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Governor, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I also want to thank you, Tricia, for sharing your powerful story. And so, Governor, as you mentioned, it is important to increase access to treatment, especially medication-assisted treatment, because that is really the gold standard in terms of supporting individuals in their recovery from addiction. In addition to that, I think twofold is that we want to reduce barriers as well, and that was also part of our strategy. And so over the last few years, actually, I'm pleased to say that New Jersey now has 47 licensed opioid treatment programs across the state of New Jersey, and they're present in every county. That didn't exist 3 years ago. So it's a real great strategy in terms of increasing access to medication. One of the things that we've done recently is to look to expand the hours of operation for our opioid treatment programs. And so with resources that became available to us, we were able to increase the opioid treatment program hours of operation to 6 days a week and into the evenings as well. 2 of the 6 programs are located here in the southern region in both Atlantic and Gloucester counties. In addition, we've also looked to expand access to medication-assisted treatment in our mental health programs, because many individuals that have a substance use disorder are also impacted by mental illness. And so the extent to which our mental health programs have the expertise and the skill sets to assess and provide support and access to MAT within their programs, the better and the more individuals that we're serving here in New Jersey. And so with additional resources, we were able to do that in 4 mental health agencies. We currently have a solicitation to further expand that, and 3 of those agencies are again here in the southern region, Atlantic, Burlington, and Camden counties. We're one of the few states that have mobile medication-assisted treatment available. One of those providers are here in Atlantic County, and we're looking with additional resources to expand access to mobile treatment. So in areas where transportation is an issue, or with our mobile outreach, we're able to go to places where individuals who are experiencing homelessness can receive access to treatment. So we are in the process of doing that as well. We also have a strong partnership with harm reduction centers, particularly here in Atlantic County, with the Visiting Nurses Association of Central New Jersey and the South Jersey AIDS Alliance. We have partnered with them to work with individuals, to help to support individuals who they work with who are interested in seeking treatment and access to medication. And with that, it has been a very successful initiative where individuals who are receiving services at the harm reduction centers are also now receiving treatment for their addiction. In terms of reducing barriers, one of the strategies at the Department of Human Services has been to eliminate prior authorization for access to medications. So when individuals are interested and practitioners are ready to prescribe medications, they're easily able to receive that. And so what I want to mention is our addictions treatment helpline, 1-844-REACH-NJ, Reach New Jersey. And that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Individuals who are interested in accessing treatment, including accessing medication-assisted treatment, can call that line. Even for those individuals who are uninsured, they have access to treatment, access to medication through that line. We're able to support that access with state appropriations, as well as with some federal resources as well. And so in terms of access for individuals who are underserved in our state, particularly in the Black community where we've seen, we have seen opioid overdose deaths, not decreasing at the extent that we see the broader population. We just awarded $750,000 to an agency, Family Connections, for them to provide on a statewide basis to all of our opioid treatment programs access to training, to coaching, as it relates to the integration of cultural competence. And particularly, they are going to be targeting how to access individuals in the Black community. And with that, also engaging them in how to support them in accessing medication-assisted treatment in the Black community, because we know that that will save lives. And finally, one of the things that we've integrated in our division this past year is that with every solicitation, our applicants need to demonstrate how they are going to integrate the evidence-based cultural competency class standards in their programs. So cultural and linguistic access in their programs, so that moving forward, we can serve all New Jerseyans in the best way possible. So thank you.
Let me just repeat, 1-844-REACH-NJ, right? I'm going to call an audible, as they say in football, for any of, in particular for Matt, Valerie, Sarah, or Christine. What states out there do you hold up as a model in this entire space, not just in the question I asked of you, Valerie, but more broadly? And to what extent do others hold us up as a model? Sorry, again, we'll spring for the extra mic next time.
That's okay. What I could share with you, Governor, is that in many of the initiatives that we are doing here in New Jersey, that we are asked to speak to that with our colleagues, with my colleagues across the country, to share many of the initiatives that we have here in New Jersey. We have a really rich, broad, depth of services and resources here, from treatment to recovery supports, housing, and the like here in New Jersey. And
well, please God, at the end of the day, again, this is when you've lost 3,081 blessed brothers and sisters, you're not anywhere near the end zone. So I'm glad that's the case, but we know, God knows we have a lot of work to do. You mentioned that we're not many states we're going to be able to get the maximum amount in the settlement. Is that right?
Yeah, we don't know exactly how many will, but it's a real testament to, and we have an unusual challenge because of how many municipalities we have here. It's every municipality above 10,000 residents, as well as every municipality that litigated the case, even if they were below 10,000. So it's 241 municipalities and all 21 counties joined. And as you mentioned, on the litigation side, this dates back to the prior administration, some of these efforts across the board, and no state, I would say, has been more aggressive in holding those accountable who created this crisis and profited from it than New Jersey.
We are the ultimate home rule state, 565 communities, which I think at one level is a source of enormous strength, but at another level, it's a source of enormous complexity. and this is no exception. Valerie, thank you. And Matt, thanks for adding that in. Paul, do you mind going over to you? I mentioned that it's 50-50 between the state and then municipalities, and you're as good as there is out there. You see you see this as clearly and as close to the ground. How do you see the settlement helping residents right here in Egg Harbor Township?
First, Governor, I want to thank you for coming to Egg Harbor Township. It's great to see you come and visit us here in Atlantic County and bringing this news about this serious problem that we've been dealing with. Egg Harbor Township will use the money within the guidelines to help combat this serious problem that we've had. And I spent 25 years in law enforcement, both at the county, local level and the county level, and this is truly a problem that's needed attention for a long time. And I guess with your leadership, Governor, that we got the attention now, and hopefully listening to people that have been able to beat back this terrible thing, we'll use it to the best to help our community forward.
Fantastic. As I mentioned, this is, if not the largest population of any community in this county, if not, it is near to that. I think it's important, I assume you're in violent agreement with this, Paul, that it's split between the state and municipalities in the sense that the state can sort of help construct the backbone of the overall effort, but the municipalities are closest to the ground. They see this up close and more personally than anyone could ever see it from the state level, right?
And I think, Governor, our ambulance service, that tells us the need of the calls for service related to this.
Yep.
Okay, you know, we have 48,000 people in Egg Harbor Township and try to produce 3 ambulances a day, and they're constantly busy with something similar to this.
Yep. God bless
Now,
them.
yep.
Paul, thank you.
Thank you, Governor. I'm glad to see you come down, and it's not snowing in
Good to
Egg
see you
Harbor
in good
Township.
weather. I was going to say the same thing. Lily, Paul, and I have a relationship by text or by phone that is almost exclusively defined by bad weather. So it's good to see you on a sunny day. Let's stay on your side of the table. Priscilla, good to see you again. Again, representing New Jersey Organizing Project Director. Working with folks without judgment or preconception or requiring that they stop using drugs as a precondition of support is how I think you all think and we all think harm reduction can be woven into service deliveries. In what ways have you seen this approach impact folks' lives, and what efforts do you think we could take to make sure the voices of individuals with lived experience are considered in planning for the use of how we use these settlement monies? And again, it's great to be with you again.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'll start by saying, you know, I started being impacted by substance use when I was a little kid, probably 7 or 8 years old, because I have many loved ones who struggle with substance use. But someone I love very dearly has been struggling for over 20 years, and she's not struggling necessarily because of the substance, but more so the systems that are in place that are meant to help her but don't. And so she's overdosed many times, unfortunately, but thankfully because of her friends who were with her while she was using, she's still with us today thanks to naloxone. And I'm really glad she had naloxone. For a long time, we weren't able to necessarily get those resources as easily to people who actually use drugs. Traditional systems of treatment didn't really work for her, AA and NA, detox, inpatient or outpatient. It just didn't work for her. And she was never really offered any other option. It was really great to hear Valerie talk about medication-assisted treatment and the ways that it's being expanded in the state, because that's actually what saved her life in the long run. And she ended up being criminalized for her substance use. The first time she ever had interaction with anyone in terms of public service, it was to be put in prison. And she did not get help in prison either. She came out and she relapsed again, overdosed again, and she could not get access to care of any kind: housing, jobs, transportation, so much stigma on her back just for using a substance. We all use substances in this room. But recently, she was connected with Prevention Resource Network, which is in Asbury Park, and they didn't ask her to stop using drugs. This was the first time she ever walked into somewhere, and they were like, "What do you need?" And they gave her what she needed, which was safe use supplies and testing for HIV and access to healthcare and offering of, hey, if you're interested, there's this thing called medication-assisted treatment, specifically buprenorphine. I'm actually, I think, using the wrong term, medication for opioid use disorder, specifically buprenorphine, and she has been stable since then. And so I really do want to just name that harm reduction works, and it works way more than we give it credit for, because when we meet people where they're at, we give them power, right? And when people have power, the ability to act for themselves, they will make the right choices for what they need. And I just want to make it clear that I want to remind us that overdose deaths are preventable, and recovery is possible, whatever that means for the person, only if we give people the tools, and only if we give people the power to do so. And right now, much of the treatment industry isn't doing that. So the story of my loved one I shared shouldn't be few and far between. And I know it's getting a little better day by day, but it shouldn't take so long for people to find the help they need. It shouldn't have taken her 20 years to get to a harm reduction center. And then in terms of making sure that people who are directly impacted have a voice in terms of how this funding is spent, we're here today having conversation because drug corporations like Purdue Pharma lied to make billions of dollars at the expense of our lives. This is not at all uncommon to find someone connected to our organization at New Jersey Organizing Project who was prescribed opioids for some high school sport or some injury and then ended up struggling with substance use disorder because their doctor eventually cut them off. And we have other people in our organization who don't have that experience and who have come to substance use in different ways and for different reasons. And while it's key that we hold drug corporations accountable, and I'm really, really grateful for the Attorney General's work in securing this funding, we also have to recognize that we can't just create categories of who deserves help and who doesn't, right? And there are other systems that we need to fix, and I think we've mentioned them here, right? Like not arresting our way out of this crisis. There's legislation recently that came up that has a council for how the settlement funding should be used that includes directly impacted people. And I do think that's a really great idea, and I also think that that should be people who use drugs, currently and in recovery, and their loved ones. So that's the only way, because here's the thing. People who use drugs and people in recovery have been saying what they need for so long, and I just don't think we've been listening, because I think sometimes we don't like what we're hearing. And I think one way that we can make sure that people who use drugs survive and get access to the care they need is by expanding access to naloxone, medication-assisted treatment, and harm reduction services like syringe access and naloxone for the ability to get for these services and for those services to get to them. So I would love to talk to you, Valerie, one day about mobile MAT in Ocean County and all across the state. So thank you so much, and I appreciate being here.
Let's hear it for Priscilla. Yeah. You have clearly have some fans here. And they're quite vocal.
I'm a fan of everyone too, so.
It's a striking, Matt was the first person to ever volunteer for my potential endeavor to become governor way back when, and he'll remember this, he was the head of policy. And the experts, far more than Matt and me, the experts will, I think, attest to this. MAT, it wasn't that long ago, MAT was like this really revolutionary, I'm not sure we can go there idea. It was sort of cutting edge, limited access to it. And you look back on that now and you say, what were we all thinking? It's pretty clear that it's a game changer. And the more we can proliferate it, the more we can proliferate harm reduction centers, the more we can bring this to the people non-judgmentally, the better off we'll be, the more lives we'll save. Thank you for that, and thank you for all you do, and it's good to be with you again. Let's flip over a couple more. Vince, great to see you and great to have you with us. This has been impacting folks in our state for a long time. We didn't just wake up and realize this. You don't have 3,081 lives lost in a single year. Complicated further by the war on drugs back in the day and all the fallout from that. As you think about this, how can we make these funds maximize their impact and change as many lives for the better as possible? And again, thank you for being here and for all you do.
Thank you, Governor. It's great to be here, of course, and thank you for coming to Egg Harbor Township and allowing us to participate. I think you said it initially, this knows no politics, and so we appreciate you coming and doing this in a bipartisan matter with all of us, with the mayor and I, because it affects everyone, and it doesn't matter. This crisis and this epidemic does not know what political affiliation you are, has no idea, where you come from. We in the local community have been affected, and I just want to point out, we had people running for office last year. Karen Fitzpatrick was impacted personally with the most tragic of outcomes, along with Assemblyman John Armato, who also lost a child, fabulous man, and it is just devastating. My children now being 17, and I have twins that are 15, it's a concern for all of us, and so I think this is a great step. I think people who are developing policy, like us, hearing from professionals, hearing from people about their experiences, hearing, for example, what we could do going forward to develop programs and policies that could improve access and potentially get people into treatment, into recovery. I think your sign on the front says, you can't see it, we can see it, New Jersey, the state of opportunity. And that's what we want for everybody. And I think everybody's got to understand this epidemic, it saps opportunity just like that. You get taking these drugs, it takes away your opportunity all the way to the most tragic of outcomes. And so I think that we all have an obligation to do what we can in this area. I will point out, and you and Matt were probably involved in this as well, one of the things that was started here, and it's just underway, but it's a pilot program, and you guys were involved in it with the Consolidated Municipal Court that is developed in Atlantic County. One of the things that was developed as part of that is the partnership with Jewish Family Services, because when you're going to municipal court, sometimes you have these addiction issues. And so the partnership with Jewish Family Services, when they recognize that somebody may be impacted by addiction, they were able to partner with them immediately and try to get them some of the help they need. And so I think that's a great thing that you guys did with this pilot program. We're going to see how it works out, but that was one of the big things that was discussed as we're talking about these issues, is how do we get people the access to the care. And if you can do it right at that point with the involvement with the Consolidated Municipal Court, I think that is going to be a great thing. And so, I think at the end of the day, the being able to work with you, work with the people who have been through this to try to develop these programs and try to develop this outreach to people, I think is going to be a great thing. And let's do everything we can in terms of reducing this epidemic, limiting its impact on families and on our communities, because that is what we all have an obligation to do. And so we stand here with you in an effort to try to make that happen.
Really well said, Vince, and I just echo what you said up front. There are few topics, few challenges that unite us so immediately across the aisle into a common cause, and that's evidenced by many elected officials from both sides of the aisle here today. It's deep appreciation for your words and your leadership, so thank you. Batting cleanup, last but not least. Caitlin and I are back together again as well. Good to see you, Caitlin, here as the director of the New Jersey Harm Reduction Coalition. A little bit, as I asked Tricia at the outset, would you mind sharing a little bit about your story? What supports have been the most important to you? And we've talked about, Priscilla in particular, talked about harm reduction centers. A little bit more color on how you see those centers, whether it's Narcan, whether it's clean supplies, non-judgmental treat, whatever it might be. How do you see that in the role it can play? And it's great to be with you.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be with you again too, Governor, and everyone at these tables, I should say. And so yeah, my story is that I was a person who used drugs. I still am a person who uses drugs, but I was an injection drug user, experiencing chaotic drug use, or substance use disorder, addiction, whatever people want to call it. And for many years, I did not have access to sterile syringes. I had access to somebody who I was using with that I was sharing syringes. I didn't know anything about testing, about safer use, about the harms I was doing to myself. And that's not just about overdose. One of the numbers, one of the things that we don't talk about in that overdose death number, there's another growing number of people who die from skin infections, endocarditis, soft tissue wounds, sepsis, including 2 people in the past year that are participants of my program and people I care deeply. So I do this work in their honor too. And for me, I didn't know why I was continuously getting infections, and I didn't know any of that. And then I was fortunate enough to live in proximity to the Harm Reduction Center at Newark, NJCRI, and was introduced to their program. I had no idea. I wasn't there looking for anything other than, supplies, because in the early 2000s, I had no idea where, the pharmacies wouldn't sell them yet. And still we see problems with that. So I was fortunate enough to be introduced to that, and I had, as Priscilla explained, non-judgmental care. It was the first place I could walk in the door and nobody was trying to tell me I was wrong. Nobody was questioning me. People were asking if I was safe. People were asking, what do I need? And once I heard, what other things were there, maybe the first day I wasn't, jumping at the, excitement, filled with excitement to try other things, I was, I come to this from a place of trauma, and as a femme person who uses drugs, there's a lot of harms that come with that. So I wasn't trusting the first person to offer me care necessarily, but slowly that trust was built up just by people opening the door. We don't talk about sometimes when people are using drugs, people don't want you in their business. They don't want you using their restroom. They question if you're in their stores. And I've experienced that, and people continue to experience that. So to have a place that says, come exactly as you are, and tell us what works, because in harm reduction we believe that people are experts in our own lives, and no one had ever treated me that way. People had told me that my thinking was wrong, that my actions were wrong, that what I was doing was wrong, and harm reduction takes a neutral stance and just says, this exists, what can we do to keep you alive? And then what's the next change? What's the next positive change? And so the services that helped me the most were just compassion. I mean, we have, like you mentioned, all the physical services, access to new syringes, now we have access to naloxone, we have, testing, but really just somebody saying, you're not messed up, your brain isn't broken, you're not a bad person. And so for me, that was the most helpful, and it continues to be the most helpful, because I did enter like 12-step recovery, and that helped for me for a certain time. But what happened while I was there was I continued to see people around me who it wasn't working for. And those people weren't just leaving and coming back and hanging out. Those people were dying. And one of those people was my partner in 2014, and he couldn't fit that mold. He had been on drug court. He had been on medication-assisted treatment. He had been arrested multiple times. He had been homeless. He had been housed. He had been all of these things, and no one was willing to meet him where he was at. He was trying to fit a mold that he couldn't. And what I see, unfortunately, when we act as if abstinence is the only goal and stopping all drug use is the only goal, we set a standard that causes people to hide their use and use behind closed doors. And more than I can count on both hands, people that I love in my life have died behind those closed doors. So harm reduction continues to meet me where I'm at and say that I can talk about things going on. And I think just that is big. I wasn't able to say that to a lot of people in my life. And I also recognize that I'm in a position where I am now housed and employed, and I'm able to talk about that. And so I stand here also representing all the people who can't say that out loud currently. And I think that, I'm going off on a tangent now, so I want to bring it back, sorry. But and we applaud the Murphy administration, because this is the first administration that recognized, wow, we need to embrace harm reduction, because what we've been doing up until now isn't working. Continuing the punitive approach, people are dying. More and more people are dying. And we can't afford one single more person to die. We know these are preventable deaths. So, investing in harm reduction that is proved to work in other states, that has been happening across the country for the past 3 decades successfully, we're excited that New Jersey is catching up, that New Jersey now has an opportunity to treat everyone with dignity.
I love that. I love being with you, as you know, and you speak truth to power, and I can't thank you enough. Is it fair to say, as we wrap here, and as they say in Hollywood, Is it fair to say, and this gets back to your partner, which triggers the question for me, that our job ought to be to put as many research-based models that we know work out into our state and allow folks that they may not be in the same slipstream that you're in? You know, is it possible he was looking for another door to go through where a different model or a different approach would have worked? Is that fair to say, that we stand up different options and allow people that flexibility of that option?
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. You just kind of explained harm reduction is why not both? I always say to people,
Right.
why not everything? Harm reduction includes abstinence, harm reduction includes medication, harm reduction includes therapy and treatment, and it includes people who will never identify. You know, the SAMHSA study was done that identified with people who are diagnosed with substance use disorder, at any given time, 9 out of 10 people with that diagnosis are not interested in treatment.
Yeah.
So then we know that's 90% of people who have the diagnosis, not even to mention the ones who don't, right? So I think more access, as my co-director Jenna Meller would say, a buffet of options.
Yeah, that feels like...
Because options are good, right?
Is Jenna here?
Jenna is here. Jenna is who's been cheering loudly.
We've now figured out where the huge energy is coming from.
There's so much to cheer for today. And I do want to tell you, I do carry a megaphone in my trunk. I never need one.
Okay. When Valerie and Tricia were sharing the mic about a half an hour ago, we could have used that.
Yeah.
Priscilla, does that sound right to you in terms of giving folks a menu of options and allowing folks to figure out the one that works for them?
Yeah, and I'll also just add, I think, there's a really important piece, and I think I tried to mention it earlier, about, making sure that bad actors in the treatment industry and in any nonprofit service organization, that we're putting measures in to make sure that the services we have are of quality. 'Cause I think so often we talk about, we need more, but people who use drugs also need equity in care and dignity in care, and so I think that's another piece of the puzzle, is increasing transparency and accountability and oversight of some of these programs that, maybe aren't meeting the measures of success.
It seems to me that's incumbent upon us, as I say to my colleagues here. Tricia, does this sound right to you in terms of the so-called menu approach? What works for you may not work for me?
It's very much on point. I think everybody recovers different. What works for me might not work for you.
Yeah.
What works for him might not work for me. My fiance is in recovery, and he recovers different from me. We have totally different recoveries, and I don't get involved in it.
Yep.
And it's exactly the way it should be.
There's no one size fits all. Valerie, anything you want to add to that before we break? Again, if we could use the megaphone next time, we'll make sure we go to your trunk first.
Yes, Governor, I think that is absolutely right on point, that you have to offer different options for individuals to choose the pathway that they believe is going to work best for them. And we fail them when we don't provide them with those different options and believe that everyone has to follow one pathway.
Well said, everybody. What a treat to be in the context of an extraordinary epidemic that is still in our midst and is as meaningful, sadly, a way as it's ever been. In that context, an inspiring discussion with really special people. So
I wanted to add
please.
too, one of the things that I sort of left out, but is super important, and we've heard this from the Attorney General and from P and from everybody really at the table, that reinforcing, investing in non-punitive measures, really seeing that we can arrest our way out of this, that increases in violence and poverty and homelessness and trauma and all the things that we've talked about with the pandemic are really doubling down when we're criminalizing this. And so to end, New Jersey's painful legacy of the drug war by creating systems of care is how we end the overdose crisis, is how we move forward.
Really
So,
well said.
Thank you.
Really well said. And I think we're in violent agreement with you on that. Fair to say, right? And I will say our administration is as well. I want to thank Behavioral Crossroads Recovery and the whole team here. So thank you all for being such gracious hosts. Yeah. Get that megaphone out. 1844-REACH-NJ. I want to repeat that number, 1844-REACH-NJ. On behalf of all of the elected officials here, myself, Vince Palestina, Mayor Paul Hodson, to the elected officials from both sides of the aisle in attendance today, to members of our administration led by the Attorney General Matt Plotkin and his colleagues. Particular shout out to Tricia. Bless you. Thank you for sharing your story, and thanks for everything you do here as a counselor. Valerie, thank you again. You get in the category of being in our administration, but you spoke incredibly importantly to the topic at hand. Priscilla, thank you for all that you do with the New Jersey Organizing Project. Good to be with you again. And that woman, a loved one in your life, we're going to keep in our prayers. And hopefully that corner was turned with this non-judgmental, what do you need from us approach, right?
I think the best thing is that she's still with us.
Yep, God love her. And certainly last but not least, Caitlin, good to be with you again, the Harm Reduction Coalition Director, to you and your colleagues. And again, to each and every one of you, thank you all for being here today and for everything you do. Bless you all. Take care.